this time, I'm going to ask you all to stand and give a round of applause to Bishop Jerome L. Williams and the New Testament Church for opening up their doors for us on tonight. And while you're standing, come on, clap your hands and receive Bishop Williams for our opening prayer and scripture.
Let us all pray. Father, we thank you for this moment in time. God, we thank you for this political conversation. Dear God, that we can come on the same accord. God, I pray right now that you would bless both candidates. Bless all of us that are in this room. God, we just want to do right by your people. And we said thank you for all that you've done for us and for what you're going to continue to do. God, bless this night. In Jesus' name, amen.
You may be seated on tonight. At this time, I would ask if there's any other clergy here tonight, would you stand at this time? If there's no other clergy, oh, come on, Minister Arnett McSwain, come on. Can our elected officials that are here please stand at this time? Senator L. Louise Lucas, Councilman Mark Hugo, School Board Member Minister Arnett D. Love McSwain. Come on, give them another round of applause. And I know we've already celebrated the great bishop, but we can't not leave out his illustrious wife, Elder Sharon Williams. Come on. Thank you so much. Real quickly, for purposes, we are live streaming. We have two outlets that are live streaming right now that'll make it easier for everyone to get it out to everyone that is at home. New Testament Church, if you go to New Testament Church, all you got to do is go to New Testament Church and click share, and it'll share to your page. Or Arnett McSwain, if you go to her personal page and click share, that way you can get this message out on tonight. We also have Councilman Vernon Tillage that just walked in as well. We have two former elected officials here, the Honorable Costello B. Williams and former Vice Mayor Elizabeth Simmons. So tonight we are here for two remarkable gentlemen, our incumbent Sheriff Michael Moore and our candidate James Cullen. We are being led tonight by our moderator, former Vice Mayor, the Honorable Lisa Lucas Burke, and our timekeeper, the Honorable Arnett D. Love McSwain. There are 10 questions because we only have two candidates. The goal is for us to be out of here by 7:30. There are 10 questions. The first question, each candidate will be given 3 minutes to answer. There will be no rebuttal to questions number 1 and question number 10. They will also be allowed 3 minutes to give their final response to the final question that our moderator will be asking of them. Questions 2 through 9, each candidate will be given 2 minutes to respond to the question, and the other person can rebut for 1 minute. You don't have to, gentlemen. If the sheriff says something to his response or you say something and either one of you want to rebut it, you have 1 minute. You must adhere to the timekeeper. Can you hold up so they can see? Mm-hmm. They have the green, they have the yellow, and they have the time, which means stop. Please stop your statement. This ain't a city council meeting where you get to finish your statement. And again, and then also at the end, each candidate, if time permits, that's up to the moderator. If time permits, you will be able to ask each other one question if you want to. You don't have to, or if you want to clarify something, any type of misinformation that has been put out and what have you. The good thing about tonight's forum is that we have two respectable men on tonight, so I think we're going to have a good time. All right? So at this time, would y'all give a round of applause to our moderator, Miss Lisa Lucas-Burt.
All right. Testing. Hello. Can you hear me? No. Is my mic? Okay, we on. Okay, I want to kind of get us motivated before we get started with the questions. So good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And we've already been given the instructions, so we know how we will deliberate. But thank you for coming out tonight. Your presence for this Sheriff's Candidates Forum is a powerful reminder that democracy works best when citizens are informed, engaged, and actively involved. Forums like this are more than just events. They are opportunities. Opportunities to listen, to ask questions, and to truly understand where these candidates stand on issues that matter most to you, your families, and our communities. At a time when headlines move fast and information can be overwhelming, it's more important than ever to go beyond the sound bites and the slogans. Taking the time to learn about the candidates' platforms, their values, and plans for the future allows you to make decisions based not just on popularity or purpose, but rather your own decisions. When you cast your vote, whether it's during the 45-day early voting period that begins this Friday, or during the general election on November 5th, you are choosing a name, not just one that's on the ballot. You're choosing a vision for our city, a voice for your family, and a leader for our community. That choice deserves careful thought, honest dialogue, and a willingness to listen, both curiosity and with care. So thank you for being here, not just to observe, but to become participants in this process. Stay curious, calculate the comments, and ask hard questions. Demand clarity, and most importantly, carry what you learn from here today with you to the voting booth and share it with other concerned voters. We know informed citizens build stronger communities, and that's something that we all have a stake in. So let's get started with our forum tonight. Okay, gentlemen, we're going to allow you an opportunity to introduce yourself and tell us what you have been doing over the past 4 years. And we're going to begin with the candidate James Cullen first, and then incumbent candidate Sheriff Moore will respond, and then we're going to alternate the questions after that. So first question.
Thank you.
Begin.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight and for being a part of this. And thank you for hosting this event. I've been a law enforcement professional for 40 years. Started out as a foot patrol cop in northern New Jersey in a city which was very much like Portsmouth. Moved on to become a police watch commander, a federal police officer in New York City for the United States Coast Guard. Became a bike patrol officer, went to law school, became a commissioned officer, and by pure luck, wound up with my first day as a commissioned officer being the morning of September 11th, 2001 in New York City for the 9/11 attacks. I was promoted at that point to the Chief of Police for the Coast Guard for the Port of New York and New Jersey, and responded to a variety of incidents that you'll see on the news: the Flight 587 crash, the blackout and the evacuation of Manhattan, Staten Island ferry crash, the Miracle on the Hudson crash, multiple New York City marathons. I then moved on to become the chief of the Sea Marshals, tactical law enforcement teams, the police commissioner for law enforcement operations in the Port of New York, New Jersey region, then a raid team officer in charge, which brought me to Portsmouth for my initial training, my first time here in 2009. Went on to Iraq and Afghanistan, was a combat medic, earned a Bronze Star, and I was brought back to Portsmouth after that deployment to be placed in charge of all law enforcement training for all Coast Guard personnel deploying to the Middle East. Moved on to become the weapons branch chief for the entire United States Coast Guard, in charge of all weapons, ranges, and armories worldwide. Went on to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, assessments, inspections, and audits, Navy Coastal Riverine Group 2 Command Cadre, the Commandant's Staff in Washington, D.C., and the Chief Evaluation Officer for the Coast Guard in my final assignment. I retired in October of 2024. So for the past 14 years, I've been volunteering for community events here in Portsmouth, including for the past 10 years as a volunteer supervisor with the Portsmouth Sheriff's Office. For the last 4 years, I was liaison to the White House Office of Management and Budget and the Chief Evidence Officer for the Coast Guard, ensuring that all of our expenditures were evidence-based. Then I became the chair of the Community Criminal Justice Board, the chair of the Military Affairs Committee, the Parking Authority, and the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission while working full-time as a Coast Guard officer.
30 seconds.
I run a large team of military volunteers who gave over 7,000 hours of volunteer service in the last year to Portsmouth museums, schools, churches, and nonprofits. You'll see them in their yellow vests at concerts, markets, festivals, feeding the hungry, or other nonprofit activities. Been married for 34 years to my wife, Kathy, who's involved in even more things in the city than I am, and together we were voted first citizens of the city of Portsmouth for 2025.
Incumbent Moore.
Good evening, everyone. I began my law enforcement career back in the mid-'80s as a state trooper here in the state of Virginia. I patrolled the area known as Suicide Strip, which is in Southampton County. Shortly thereafter, I began my federal law enforcement career as a special agent with the DEA stationed in Norfolk and Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The last 22 and a half years of my federal law enforcement career, I served as a special agent supervisor for the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, commonly referred to as ATF. I was a supervisor in Norfolk, Washington, D.C., Richmond and Charlottesville, Virginia, and the wonderful city of Detroit, Michigan. I retired in 2012 from federal law enforcement, and I began teaching. I started teaching at a junior college outside the city of Richmond, Virginia, and Chester, Virginia. I taught in the health science field. At the same time, a few months after beginning that career, I was also teaching at the Virginia Beach campus of Tidewater Community College. I held those positions until I decided to run for sheriff in 2017. I was elected to the first term in 2017 and took office that January 2018. I was reelected in 2021 to the second term, and from the first term to the second term, it was 4 key things that I had to concentrate on. Number 1 was increasing employee pay. Number 2 was constantly expanding services to our senior citizens, our disabled and disadvantaged citizens. Number 3 was to take a proactive role in helping to reduce the crime in the city of Portsmouth. And number 4 was finally being able to get the jail moved off the waterfront. Now, each one of those 4, of course, started in my first term. But I've been able to build on those because it wasn't a type of, those weren't the type of things that you would just achieve and then move on to something else. They required building on those things. For instance, when we talk about employee pay.
30 seconds.
Thank you. When we talk about employee pay, Portsmouth Sheriff's Office was the lowest paid in the region. In order to attract good people and to maintain good people, you have to have a good team, and that required good pay. So the process started with 1 city manager, and I lost count actually. It was between 5 or 6 city managers later, because that was the problem. I had to be persistent because it was a constant change of city managers. Finally, we're at a point where we are now have gone from the worst to almost the first. We're equal in pay to the Chesapeake, Virginia Beach, and even the city of Richmond, Virginia. So that was key because it's a team effort. I may be the sheriff, but I haven't been able to accomplish all the things that we've been able to accomplish, which we will talk about tonight, without a great team of employees. So it was worth me fighting, and it was a fight to get that pay increase, because the thing that was a lot of citizens don't realize. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right, we move into our second question, and you will have 2 minutes to respond. And we'll begin with incumbent Moore for this question. How would you coordinate with the Portsmouth Police Department, city agencies, and community organizations to improve public safety while avoiding duplication of resources?
The primary functions of the Portsmouth Sheriff's Office is, of course, court security, jail security, civil processing. 5 years ago, added to those three became a fourth. We took over the School Resource Deputy Program. And the reason we took over that program, we were asked by the city and the police department, because of their low staffing, could we take over those schools, which we did. But also, after being in office for only probably 30, 35 days, I was approached by the city attorney, the city manager, and at that time, the city police chief. And they wanted to know, would it be possible for the sheriff's office to take over intake and booking? And intake and booking, normally when a police officer makes arrests, it may tie them up from anywhere from 2 to 3 hours. So when we took over that on behalf of the police department, those officers are able to get back on the street just by bringing the inmates to us, and we would do all the processing for them. We also took over a portion of serving warrants on their behalf. Mentioned earlier, we took over the School Resource Officer Program. And the one big thing that we've had a challenge with, we also took over transporting juveniles. Prior to about 2.5 years ago, juveniles were housed in the city of Chesapeake. Chesapeake canceled that contract, and it became Portsmouth's responsibility to transport juveniles. We were asked by the city manager at that time if it was possible for us to take over that function and help out the police department, which we did. The unfortunate thing is there is no juvenile facility in the area. We're taking juveniles on behalf of the city and the courts as far away as Bristol,
30
Virginia.
seconds.
So that has created a really, really critical issue, because it takes, during the course of a day, if we have someone to go to Bristol, we may have 4, 5, or 6 other deputies involved in transporting people locally as well, and not to even mention the fact that we're responsible for transporting people to mental health facilities. So it is a challenge, but we're able to get it done. We've made a commitment to the city and the citizens to make sure we carry out that function.
All right, Candidate Cullen.
Thank you.
Question, would you like, if you need me to reread the question?
No,
then-
no, I'm good, thank
Okay.
you. So our city's problems are complex, and they require not just an all-of-government approach, but they require an all-of-stakeholders approach, which means police, sheriff, code enforcement, health department, all city departments, civic leagues, other community groups, faith-based organizations, schools, nonprofits. A lot of our problems can be prevented through early recognition, and we have that ability with our school resource deputies to recognize a lot of these problems before they become bigger problems. And then early intervention. Stop the small things from becoming big things. The best way to do this is through open, frank, and ongoing communication and collaboration to identify what the problems are, what the resource gaps are, and to cooperatively plan the ways to use existing resources in a more efficient manner. So a philosophy that you will hear in the fire service and you'll hear in the Coast Guard, but not so much with law enforcement, is called the Incident Command System under the National Incident Management System. It's an all-stakeholders approach that brings together representatives from all involved parties, working together to identify the largest problems and assign resources to address them. Right now, the Portsmouth Police Department operates a real-time crime center, but the city does not have a unified incident command system in place that brings together all stakeholders to address problems, especially violent crime and gun violence. Through my position on the Crime and Gun Violence Prevention Commission, I've begun the conversations with not only the Portsmouth Emergency Services, but also our emergency management partners in our adjoining cities to start moving toward a unified command, resource sharing, and crime reduction program, leveraging the incident command system and better utilizing our existing resources.
Okay. Now to our next question, and we will have Candidate Cullen. We'll begin first on this one. Portsmouth has neighborhoods with very different crime patterns. How would you tailor the sheriff's office programs to address neighborhood-specific issues?
Right on. So I often use the analogy, if a patrol car never comes down my street again in my section of Churchland, it'll have zero impact on crime. But there are other neighborhoods that need those patrol cars. So sometimes the most effective way to deal with crime is to prevent it before it occurs. Early recognition, early intervention. You can't have early recognition unless you truly know your neighborhood. Continuity and consistency is the key. When we have a constant rotation of law enforcement officers through a neighborhood, those officers don't really take ownership, or they don't know their neighborhood intimately. And the community doesn't really buy into that relationship or develop true trust. That trust is needed for citizens to take the risk, the act of faith of sharing information with that officer or deputy that might lead to saving lives, prevention of violent crime, and overall crime reduction for that neighborhood. So we've all been to civic league meetings or community meetings where the law enforcement officer assigned to that neighborhood seems to rotate frequently or seems unaware of things that have happened in that neighborhood since the previous meeting. I would assign that neighborhood to one deputy or one team of deputies and make that their primary responsibility. Let them work with the stakeholders of that specific neighborhood to identify and address the problems that are unique to that neighborhood using the resources that are unique to that neighborhood. The civic leagues, the tenants association, the churches, the other faith-based organizations, even the programs at the local community centers are often going to be already tailored to the neighborhood and its unique needs, and a law enforcement officer needs to know how to draw that stuff in. If we don't have presence and consistency in those neighborhoods, we can't build the relationships that are necessary to address that neighborhood's specific concerns.
Thank you. Incumbent Sheriff Moore.
Yeah,
Would
thank
you like
you.
me to reread the question?
No, I'm good,
Okay.
thanks. The key to any neighborhood, no matter where it is or the makeup of that neighborhood, is to be proactive in that neighborhood. That's why it is key with our department that we partner with community organizations. We support community organizations throughout this city with not only resources like tents, table, and chairs, and oftentimes food, we also support them with their security. Deputies are in attendance. And with those deputies being there, it's not that they're just there to offer that protective feel, but they're there to engage in the community. Prime example, this past summer, we partnered with 2 community organizations for at-risk kids, teenagers. The good thing about this program, it ran for the entire summer. Those teenagers were able to get paid, and we partnered with our community group, which is responsible for cutting grass, lawn maintenance for most of our senior citizens in the city. So the key thing is to have that constant engagement. But also the flip side of that also is every citizen that we talk about is not able to walk freely. So we have to address those people that are incarcerated because we want to make sure that when they go back to their neighborhoods, they're better off than what they came when they came to our custody. So we offer those reentry programs. Those programs are giving them the basic things like computer skills, being able to complete a high school diploma, which is key, learning how to use the computer to fill out applications, but making sure they have proper identification when they're released, and that key component to make sure that they have residence when they leave our facility. But that's how we control coming to our custody, going back to the neighborhoods. So we have to approach it from all angles, community groups, reentry programs. We just have to show that presence and be consistent with it.
Thank you. Our next question to candidate Cullen. What is your plan for building trust between the sheriff's office and communities of color and young people, including strategies for transparency, accountability, and community engagement?
Thank you. So we, and by we, I mean all of law enforcement, need to stop betraying our young people. As a uniformed officer, I've seen the way that teenagers and young adults nationwide looked at me or anyone else wearing the uniform, and I've tried to analyze that look. Why are they looking at me that way? The look that they give you is the look that a child would give to a parent who abandoned them, or the way that you'd look at a loved one who'd betrayed you. And I ask myself, why? Why are we getting this look? Because we start out the relationship at an early age telling them, we're your buddies, we're your friends, we're here to help you. You can trust us. We're going to be here for you for the long term. We show up in the child development centers or in the DARE program in the schools with a giant stuffed dog, and we tell them that we're someone that they can count on, and we're going to be there for them for the long run. But then sometime around the time they start to get chin hair, around the time they hit adolescence, or even before that, we start to disappear and we're not as engaged as we once were. or we're giving them side eye and automatically treating kids as if they're potential suspects. We lose their trust. We're no longer looked up to, and these young kids turn to other authority figures in their neighborhoods and other role models in their neighborhoods because they've learned that we, the cops, are not there for them like we promised we would be. So, like in the previous question, presence and consistency are the key to establishing these lifelong relationships. We can't start it and then step away when they hit a certain age. We need to be there with as little turnover as possible throughout much of the life of a young person, as much as possible, to give them a reliable authority figure to trust as they go through their difficult years. It's not easy finding cops who want to do this, but we have to specifically advertise for and screen for deputies who want to be doing these types of duties as a career or as a second career if they're retiring from the military or retiring from law enforcement elsewhere.
Thank you. And Incumbent Moore, same question.
We recognize the importance of investigating and investing in our youth. That's why we started programs back in the school from K to third grade like DARE. DARE is an opportunity to share with those early learners in school, because we all know when kids learn to read, by the time they're in the third grade, it's a benefit and a chance that they will graduate. So we incorporate that along with our DARE program. And DARE, it's transitioned over the years. It used to best be say no to drugs, but it's say no to a lot of things now and expose these kids at an early age. But one of the key things that we expose them to is law enforcement presence. I think that helps, and it has helped. And we also have the SROs who are in the schools. So they're not there just as armed security, but they act as mentors also. And the great thing about the SRO program is not only during the course of the school day, but we're responsible for all school sporting and non-sporting activities. So that gives law enforcement an opportunity to really mesh with the young folks and those kids, those very, very important ages. And like starting next week, we'll be involved in a literacy program here in the city of Portsmouth at Douglas Park Elementary School, where deputies will volunteer 1 hour a week to go and read to these kids to make sure. So it's showing that relationship. And all of that spills out into the community, and it benefits those children and their families at a very, very early age. So it's that constant involvement. We're all across this city involved in every community action that's possible. We did one this past Saturday. We have 2 coming up this weekend. So involvement, having a plan, and knowing how to carry that plan out. But the key is we can reach these young folks, because at the prime place they're going to be every day, at least 5 days a week, are in the school. So we take advantage of that setting to get across what we can do working together to benefit their futures.
Thank you. All right, our next question, and we will have candidate Cullen to begin. How would you manage the sheriff's office budget and staffing to ensure deputies have the training and resources they need for de-escalation and community programs?
Right now, the police department and the sheriff's office are running training programs that are almost completely independent of each other, despite them both being in the same city. The sheriff's office has its own training academy, and the police department uses the regional training academy, which is up on the peninsula, for their basic training, followed by local field training here in Portsmouth. Running 2 independent training programs is not budget friendly and is not the best use of resources. The same holds true for acquisitions and purchasing. With limited collaboration on purchasing and standardization of equipment and supplies across the 2 primary law enforcement agencies working in the city. So I'd immediately push to unify the law enforcement training programs for the sheriff, the police, the fire marshals, who are also sworn law enforcement officers, and code enforcement. Starting their careers out under one roof at one facility, bringing in instructors from all of the involved departments and the agencies to work cooperatively to train new personnel to work together as a team to break down the us versus them mentality between the agencies that sometimes exists, and to let each agency learn from the best practices and the lessons learned from the other agencies. All of these law enforcement officers need to train on and practice de-escalation. Whether it's a code enforcement officer having a conversation with a homeowner over an unmaintained property, a fire marshal dealing with an angry business owner during a fire investigation, a police officer dealing with the angry parties during a car crash investigation, or a deputy sheriff trying to resolve a fight between inmates or a disorderly person in the courthouse. Having them all receive standardized training under one roof is not only cost-effective, but it ensures that all of Portsmouth's law enforcement officers understand how the others operate and how they will interact during a crisis.
Incumbent Moore.
Do I get that 1 minute to kind of
You do.
respond?
You do have
Yeah.
1 minute to rebuttal.
Yeah. It's been some discussion in the past about merging the police with the sheriff's office training. The difference is, our deputies may be on the job for anywhere from 9 to 10 months, working in the jail before they go to the training academy. And once they go to that training academy, our scope of training is a lot different than the police department. Our deputies are trained in court security, civil processing, and jail security. So it's a completely different field. So it might be some overlapping where we'll be able to train with some courses together, but it just wouldn't work out. Our mission is completely different. The police department has a mission of law enforcement and patrolling the streets. Ours, and responding to crime. Ours is a little bit different. Now, can I ask a
Now,
question?
can Incumbent Moore,
Yeah,
please?
in the past 7 years, we've really invested in our training academy to include interactive training and de-escalation simulators. Staff attend updated escalation training on a regular basis. And one of the main keys with our training facility is we bring in legal minds. We bring in attorneys to go over legal things, anywhere from civil rights violations to the law in general. So we're constantly updating and upgrading and making sure that our employees have the proper training going forward. But the de-escalation is key, especially for those who work in the jail setting and even in the court setting, because when you're dealing with people on a daily basis, whether they're incarcerated or those visitors that come to the court system, you have to be ready to address all issues that may happen. And with the de-escalation training and just being on your toes, well-trained, and prepared for any incidents that may happen.
Thank you. All right. Candidate Cullen.
Yes.
Next question. The sheriff's office interacts with the courts, jail operations, and regional partners. What changes, if any, would you make to detention and inmate management policies to improve safety, reduce recidivism, and ensure humane conditions?
So to improve safety, some of the biggest dangers to the deputies or to the inmates comes from moving the inmates outside of the jail or outside of the courts. So when I was with the Community Criminal Justice Board, we pushed for the creation of a video arraignment system that allowed the prisoners to attend court remotely, eliminating the risks and the expenses involved with transportation from the jail to the courthouse and back. So I'd continue to advocate for use of remote video whenever possible, whenever lawful. To reduce recidivism, I want to greatly expand our educational opportunities for people who are in custody, to try to break the cycle that sees them returning to criminal activity in jail. My intent is to introduce or expand GED, college, skilled trades, and financial independence training for people who are in custody. The Tidewater Community College's Skilled Trades Academy and the YWCA's Women's Empowerment Program have expressed an interest in bringing more of their training programs onto the grounds of the city jail, allowing students to enroll while they're still incarcerated. The problem with completion of all these training programs and preventing people from their normal return to society is what happens when they're released from custody. They will find themselves immediately returning to the social situations, the relationships, the living arrangements, or the influences that promptly see them back in trouble. So how do we offer an alternative? We have this large jail that we've inherited, which has room for many inmates that is sitting empty right now. So my intent would be to eliminate those danger points by converting a section of that jail into transitional housing for people who are in the process of being released, then released, but already enrolled in their program, in their skilled trades program, or their women's empowerment program. Give them a place to stay that takes them away from those issues that normally puts people right back in the same cycle of recidivism.
Thank you. And Incumbent Moore, is this your response?
Yes,
or
the 1 minute rebuttal.
The 1 minute rebuttal? Okay.
The facility that we are in now is built to house 1,300 inmates. Portsmouth City Jail has less than 200 inmates. What we're looking into is a possibility of maybe a portion of that jail being built out, which would take time, for to house juveniles. We have strict regulations as it relates to who can be in a jail setting. All of that is controlled by the Department of Corrections, and in most cases, the sheriff. Transitional housing, and I'm just going to roll right into the question now. Transitional housing is something that we work through with our reentry program. So we just don't have an educational component with the reentry program. We also have that aftercare. And the person in our custody needs that mental health care also. We make sure they get that while they're incarcerated, as well as when they're released. That's why the partnerships that we have with behavioral health are so important, because they're able to help facilitate, along with our reentry program, housing when those people leave. And the reentry program also does an excellent job of placing incarcerated citizens, once they return to the communities, in jobs. We've been very, very, very successful. So our reentry program is really, really in-depth and broad scope. So it's not just the educational component or making sure they have the proper identification. It's making sure they have somewhere to go when they leave our facility, and making sure in most cases that if we can help them find employment, we do. One of our best employees for the last 5 years is a former inmate in the Portsmouth City Jail. So he was able to get a job with us, and the great thing about it, we want him to use it as a starting point, because he's been with us now 4.5, almost 5 years. He can move on to something else better because it looks great on his resume that he has worked for the sheriff's office. So he has completely rebuilt his life, and it's a lot of cases like that. But the reentry program and that housing issue and the medication issue and the mental health is key. That's why it's important to have those partnerships with people like behavioral health.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Next question, and we'll start with candidate Cullen. How do you view the sheriff's role in addressing root causes of crime, mental health, substance use, and youth services? And what non-enforcement programs would you prioritize or expand?
So I look at a shooter's life, as a person's life, I should say, as an assembly line, like a conveyor belt, with the person moving from left to right. To the left is birth, to the right is the person as they are today. Unfortunately, far too often, we find that the product that's coming off the right side of the assembly line becomes a shooter or a victim of a shooter. So all along that conveyor belt, or all along that assembly line, are a series of inputs. So prenatal care, don't drink while you're pregnant, don't smoke in the car, did they go to a child development center, were there parent figures involved, did they have good nutrition, how much screen time, did they wear a helmet riding a bike, all of the things. When you look at that timeline, or that conveyor belt, the sheriff's office has multiple touch points along that assembly line. Presence at child development centers and community events, the DARE the DARE program and the school resource deputies, the courts, some of the court programs, some involvement with probation and parole, definitely the entire time in custody and reentry if a person does wind up in custody. So all of these touch points are opportunities to do more to intervene in the sequence of events before a person becomes a shooter or becomes the victim of a shooting. So I would prioritize those programs that have our deputies proactively involved in young people's lives, training our school resource deputies to be better able to recognize problems or unusual behavior before it spills over into violence, working more closely with the police department to report the issues that start in the schools before they spill over into the neighborhoods, where unfortunately kids far too often have access to firearms and far too often take it out by shooting up the other person's building and accidentally, shooting people who are completely not involved in it.
Thank you. All right, incumbent Moore, same question. Would you like me to reread the question?
No, I'm good,
Okay.
thank you. I think one of the keys is we have to look at our communities as a whole collectively. And a lot of the crime issues start with our most vulnerable citizens, whether that's the homeless, people suffering from substance abuse or mental health issues, and also our senior citizens. So we have programs to address each of those. Number one, with our senior citizens, we often feed to make sure they have food. We started a program back in March of this year. With all the food and the nutritional programs being cut across the country, we felt there was a need to address that issue that was dealing with the food. Mental health and health issues, whether it's physical or mental, we address those when those people are in our custody, making sure that, again, when they return to their communities, they're better off leaving than what they were when they came into our custody. That's why partnerships, again, I know I had reiterated it earlier, but those partnerships with organizations like Behavioral Health, they're huge. So we want to make sure people get the care that they need, that they don't come to our custody from the very beginning. And that's why the DARE program, that's why the feeding program, and the homeless program, that's another major issue. I'm sure most of y'all remember, prior to the pandemic, churches in the area housed homeless during the winter months for 1 week. Then they would rotate to another church. Well, the pandemic shut down that process. So we entered a partnership with Dr. Darlene Sparks Washington, who's a wonderful lady. We partnered with the homeless. We actually transitioned one of our buildings, one of our sheriff buildings, into a housing for the homeless. So ever since the pandemic, going 5 years now, we've housed the homeless not only during the winter months, but 12 months a year around the clock, because summer months are just as drastic on a person's health as the winter months. So we have to address the homeless, the mental health illness, the substance abuse, making sure our seniors have what they need, and making sure our young people, which is the DARE program and community events, have what they need.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, our next question, we'll start with incumbent Moore. What policies would you implement to improve deputies' recruitment, retention, and wellness, especially given policing stresses? And how would you ensure accountability without undermining the morale?
The first thing that started with us, and I mentioned that earlier, we had to do something about the pay increase, because that's how you're going to be able to retain people, good people. When I first came into office, we were losing a lot of good people to Chesapeake Sheriff's Office and the Virginia Beach Sheriff's Office. And that's when the process started to increase employees' pay. And also one of the things that I observed when I first came into office, it was deputies assigned to the jail that had been in there for their entire career, 12, 13 years. Now, that's okay if that's where you want to serve your entire career, but you should have the option to be able to be promoted and move in another setting, whether that's civil processing or court security or even the school resource deputy program. So they have those opportunities now. So, and I think that's why we're one of the few agencies in the area, and maybe the state, that has less than 5 open positions currently right now. We have actually, I think, 3 as of today. That's it. We'll be totally fully staffed. And the other thing about the mental health issue, we have what we call a stress-free zone. Those deputies will be able to take 30 minutes to go. All of them can't go at once. We'll have 30 minutes to go and relax in a relaxed setting, whether it's watching the TV, listening to music, or reading. This helps with the mental health. And we also have those mental health people that are on our staff. They have that opportunity to have those meetings and discussions with them. And also, we're in partnership with Employee Assistance Program, which is run through the city. So all of those are able to address any issues that our deputies or civilian employees may have.
Thank you. Candidate Cullen, same question.
Thank you. So it's not an easy time to be a law enforcement officer. It's not a popular thing to do like it was when I grew up. For many years, society and the media have viewed law enforcement officers as the bad guys, and it's become normal to criticize, harass, and abuse officers, and it takes a toll. It takes a strong emotional toll on the law enforcement officers, and it can be especially hard on younger officers and deputies with less life experience who are dealing with situations they've never encountered before. So one of the things I'd be working to do is to bring in more retiring military members, especially in this city where we have so many Navy and Coast Guard people who are retirement eligible at 38 years old, usually with a pension, emotional maturity, kids in the schools of a certain age that they don't want to take them out, and with strong leadership experience in structured environments. That doesn't mean excluding young people, it just means more aggressively recruiting the retiring military personnel who are already with pensions and are less chasing salaries as the big picture of how they want to live the rest of their life. I would be going directly to the TAPS programs, the transitional programs, and other career transition programs, making sure that we're talking to them early in their retirement process. I'd also restore the robust auxiliary deputy training program that we once had, which gave currently serving military members the opportunity to attend a nighttime training program and become sworn auxiliary deputy sheriffs, which gave them a chance to test drive the agency, to become fully qualified and increase the chance that they'll stay with us as a paid employee upon retirement from their military service. The police department currently has officers who are active duty military and serving in mounted patrol, training, community service with great success, and we can do the same. And finally, every deputy should know exactly what the performance and requirements are that are expected of him and her in order to move up in rank and pay grade. We have to continue to work with our city government to ensure that employee pay remains competitive so we don't lose personnel to other agencies.
Thank you. All right, our next question will go addressed to incumbent Moore. How would you balance enforcement priorities with civil liberties concerns such as partnerships with federal agencies, surveillance, technologies, or arrest and detention practices?
I've actually had this to come up recently, dealing with ICE. Portsmouth was listed for some reason as a sanctuary city, which basically means that we're refusing to cooperate with the federal government, which was not true. I submitted a letter to them explaining we're not a sanctuary city, but I do have a problem with the way they're operating because we have to make sure that civil and human rights are not violated and everyone has due right process. So that was the issue I had with it. But the key thing with the city of Portsmouth and the sheriff's office is we have a policy to address when people come into our custody. It's a civil violation, not a criminal violation. If it's just a civil violation, we will contact that organization, which in most cases would be ICE. So to have the designation as that city that was unwilling to work with the federal government was not true. But as long as we're in the process of helping them out, we don't have any issues with that at all. We just have to abide by what the laws are. I mean, I've been in law enforcement for almost 40 years. I've never violated anyone's rights, civil or human rights, and I wasn't about to start then. So it's key, and plus it's a liability. It's a huge liability for the city itself to hold. In our case, we can only hold someone for 48 hours unless they're charged. So it's key, but you know, we've only had one case this year where we had to contact ICE, and ICE did the right thing. They showed up the very next day within 24 hours.
Thank you. All right, our next question will be directed to Mr. Cullen,
Okay. Same
candidate
question.
Cullen.
Okay,
Same
thank you.
question.
So the civil liberties concerns the partnerships with federal agencies, the surveillance technologies, and arrest and detention practices is an ongoing challenge because technology changes and it moves the line on what might be considered to be a quote-unquote reasonable expectation of privacy. At what point you could say, what would the average person be expected to observe? So if you put an 8-foot privacy fence around your property, you wouldn't expect someone to be standing on a ladder looking at it. But then we had helicopters and we had drones, and so it changes the line on what is considered to be a reasonable expectation of privacy or what an average person can expect to be private. If the average commercially available car now has technology that can sense heat, do you have a reasonable expectation of privacy when your grow house in your attic lights up like a Christmas tree when that person driving a Cadillac can see it? So as tech changes, the courts and the legislators are constantly struggling with this and constantly moving the line. So how do we find the balance between tech as a useful crime solving or community caretaking tool, like for finding missing or abducted persons, or it's being used as Big Brother, which we don't want. So also, even if that tech is currently in benign hands, how do we prevent it from being used against the public by a future bad actor? So for now, we're relying on the court decisions and legislative changes to control or limit our use of technology, like, for example, the bill that was passed in May to restrict the use and duration of storage of surveillance camera data. But this is going to get more interesting because as we move into AI, we're going to find that the technology is emerging faster than the legislation or the jurisprudence that can catch up to it. And that's where the chief law enforcement officer or the sheriff has to decide whether the actions that he or she is proposing to take are in alignment with the intent of the federal and the state constitutions.
Thank you. All right, Sheriff Moore, a rebuttal.
Yeah, just to rebuttal. As it comes to the surveillance technologies, again, our core responsibilities are court security, jail security, civil processing, and the SRO program in the schools. We really don't get into surveillance technologies. The closest we can get to that is it might be some type of large event. We may have a drone. That's it. But the surveillance technology really doesn't apply to our agency as much as, say, Isle of Wight County Sheriff's Office, where they're the primary law enforcement agency. We are a support agency to our city and to our police department. Technologies in that aspect, we have very little to do with.
Thank you. All right, we're at our final question for tonight, and then we'll proceed if you gentlemen would like to ask a question of each other. And our final question will begin with incumbent Moore, and it reads, each of you bring a different experience. What in your background best prepares you to be Portsmouth Sheriff, and why should you or someone consider a vote for you?
I think you have to take in consideration the background I had prior to being elected sheriff. But most importantly, I think you have to take into consideration the job that I've been able to do since I've been in office. You know, again, I hate to keep harping on what our primary functions are, but those 4 core principles of what we're responsible for doing. Everything else we do outside of those 4 core principles is like a collateral duty. And I give you an example, and I share with you, since we're in a place of worship. When I first ran, when I was elected in 2017, one of my opponents said I was just going to be a yes man. Yes man meaning answer to other politicians that were hired in my level or certain community groups. And I am a yes man. I will own up to it, because when a citizen calls me that's a widow and tells me she's on a fixed income and she has problems having someone to take care of her yard because she can't afford it. So she asked, Sheriff, can you take care of it for me? My answer was yes, because she's a widow, and it's written that we take care of widows. So with food, when I travel throughout the city during the course of an afternoon, I run across homeless people. A lot of homeless people I know. I approach them, give them money to make sure they have food, and try to persuade them to go to the homeless shelter that we run along with Portsmouth Homeless Volunteers. Because it is written that we shelter the homeless. And when it comes to food, this same widow that asked about taking care of her lawn, she was so thankful for the meals that we pass out to seniors at senior complexes during the holidays, which is Thanksgiving and Christmas. And one of those seniors said, this is so nice, Sheriff. It'd be nice if we could have this more often. So that's when we started our food program. We prepare food Tuesdays and Thursdays and deliver that free of charge to those seniors. But not just the seniors, but those in need of food, no matter what age they are. Because it is written, feed the hungry. So that's what we do outside of our core responsibilities. We're deeply engaged and involved in the community. But I could not do all that we've been able to achieve, and we've been able to achieve a lot. You can just go online and check. I mean, the facts are there. We do it with an excellent staff. We go beyond what we're responsible for doing for this city. We do much more to take care of our citizens. Because when you think about our seniors, they're the backbone of our neighborhoods, our communities. I was raised in Cavalier Manor. If you cross Greenwood Drive, I was raised in the 4th house on the right. So, but I treat every community in this city just like it's Cavalier Manor. I don't care what the makeup is. I don't care if people voted and supported me in the past. It's our community. It's my opportunity.
Thank you.
To make it better.
Thank you.
And candidate Cullen.
Thank you.
Same question.
So why? Because I work with everybody. I have all stakeholders, facilitator, problem solver, interagency mindset. And that's the way that I've solved problems and responded to crises all over the world, by leveraging relationships, by bringing in other agencies to solve problems. And it's the way I get things accomplished as well in my 14 years of volunteering and working here in this city. I'm a proven leader who's taken charge of many teams and specialized units and turned them into the best of the best. I work very closely with the local military commands in this area, and I'll be able to leverage those relationships into cooperative agreements on how to not only deal with the daily activities in our city, but also how to deal with the emergencies that lie in our city's future. We have 2 major terrorism targets in our city and at least 1 nuclear power plant in our city at all times. We need to be having the response conversations now and do the planning well in advance of any emergencies. and I'm committed to Portsmouth. This is my last job interview. I could be retired right now, and I could be sitting on a beach. I could be doing a variety of other things, but I've chosen to commit to the city of Portsmouth. And you've seen me volunteering here in this city for 14 years to make the city better. You've seen what kind of leader I am and what I can accomplish with nothing but unpaid volunteers and a desire to do the right thing. So I ask you to imagine what I'll be able to accomplish with a professional staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, let's give our candidates a round of applause. Great job. Good job. Okay, we started on time and we have ended on time, but we do have another couple minutes if you gentlemen would like to ask a question of each other. And we'll start with incumbent Moore. Do you have a question?
Yeah, I do. I was a little confused about when you were speaking about military personnel coming to work for the sheriff's office. Is that in the capacity of an auxiliary unit?
Yes. Well,
Is it-
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
should I wait for?
It is.
Okay,
And
you have 1 minute to
Yeah.
respond.
the key with the auxiliary units are, it's a liability. When you go through the sheriff's office training for an auxiliary unit, I know you all are tired of hearing this, but you're trained to work or volunteer in the courts, the jail, or civil processing. Anything outside of that scope of training, whether you're riding a bike or walking the beat in Old Town, is a liability. And I found out the hard way. When I first came into office, the chief of police at that time called the office and basically filed a complaint, why was the auxiliary unit walking up and down High Street? Well, the answer was we were trying to help out to make sure everybody is safe, so they weren't just, and I used to push, you can't just walk certain areas of the city, you got to patrol all areas of the city. But then it went to a liability issue. DCJS and the state covers any incidents with us. State Compensation Board, the state said anything outside the scope of that training, they would not be liable. They would not cover the liability. So then it went from the police chief to, I know it's going, but they really
Okay.
need to hear this.
Okay,
They
the
really do.
question
And
to
I'm gonna be real
Cullen.
short.
Okay.
And then it went to the city manager and then the city attorney, and the city took the same stance, that it was a liability that they were not willing to accept. And the key to all of this, again, is the scope of the training. The scope of the training. Now, if the police department had an auxiliary unit, which they do, they can, because that's in the scope of their training. But the sheriff's department, it is a huge liability. And really, and this is the way I feel, I come from an extensive training background. It's dangerous to think that you're going to give somebody a few weeks of training, give them a gun and a badge, and tell them to hit the streets. That's a liability that I'm not willing to put on any individual or the city itself. So a lot of thought, just yesterday, 3 seasoned police officers were killed in Pennsylvania. So an insurance agent who wants to be an auxiliary, it takes more than a few weeks of training, giving them a gun and giving them a badge. It takes the responsibility to make sure they have some training and on-the-job training beyond this training that you get in the training academy. So that's the issue I have with it, but the city will not cover liability, nor the state, because I know a lot of the businesses in Old Town thought I just pulled the auxiliary unit for no reason. That's not the truth. It was a liability issue, but we still assist. I'll give you a prime example. Every
Sure.
time the management at Roger
Incumbent.
Brown's,
At some point.
The question to your incumbent,
but I just
to
had
the
to explain
candidate.
that because that's key.
It is.
That's a key thing that has been misquoted. I don't like being misquoted. I like for the facts to be out there, and that's why I share the facts myself.
Great.
It's beyond the scope of what we're trained to do. It's a liability.
So the question to candidate Cullen is about the use of military as
Yeah, so
the deputy officer.
I think the initial question.
You have 2 minutes to respond.
Thank
to.
you. I think the initial question was I talking about auxiliary or was I talking about recruits, meaning recruits to become permanent employees? And the answer is both. What I was specifically talking about was trying to target the 38-year-olds or someone in that age bracket who are coming off active military duty, have the maturity, have the skill set, have the leadership experience to be able to come in and have a whole nother career here above and beyond their military pension. So that's what I was talking about in response to that question from a recruiting standpoint. It's a target that I feel like we could be spending more time in. As far as the use of the auxiliary and the training programs for the auxiliary, it's called a basic law enforcement training program, BLE training program, which trains you to be a law enforcement officer above and beyond jail, civil process, and court security. The sheriff's office, for several years, since 2019, I believe, is the last time that they ran a training program for auxiliaries, the evening training program, and has not given a evening training program for BLE, basic law enforcement officer, in at least that long. At least none that none of us were made aware of. The police department right now is talking to the regional academy about the possibility of running a nighttime auxiliary training program to plus up the numbers of people that we're talking about, something that we could either piggyback on or we could reactivate the training program right here in Portsmouth that people have gone through in the past that was not considered to be a liability. They were BLE deputies who are out there on the street, just like the ones you see running radar, just like the ones that you see supplementing at various events. And in many cases, you'll find that, as the sheriff mentioned earlier, folks will work up to 9 months prior to going through training. So I would never want to have someone do that. I would want them to go through the full BLE program and the field training component of it prior to ever being out on the streets. But it's a asset that we are not tapping into right now for one reason or another, and it's something that I absolutely intend to pursue by renewing those conversations. We don't have the same city manager. We don't have the same police chief. Right.
Thank you. All right, and Candidate Cullen, you have the same opportunity to ask incumbent Moore a question that's been on your mind.
What's the most stressful part of this job?
The most stressful part for me has been making sure that we do as much as we possibly can for the citizens of the city. Mm-hmm. And I know that's a pretty broad answer, but when you think about our responsibilities, what those primary ones are, and what our responsibilities are to the community, even though we're almost 100% staff-wise, it still spreads us thin to get the job done. And a prime example again, without having a juvenile facility, any day during the course of a week, we have 8 or 10 deputies in different directions transporting people to mental health facilities, from court to jails, and the juveniles from the court system to as far away as Bristol, Virginia. So when we talk about how do we use our resources and our manpower, it all reverses back to what those key functions are. And that is a challenge. It's a huge challenge, and I think auxiliaries are a great idea. That's why we need auxiliaries, because then they could help in the courts and the jails. That's what the scope of the training is.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. You have expressed your passion for this position adequately, and we thank you. So let's give them one more final round of applause. You want this one? Take this one.
All right, let us all stand because we're going home. Can we give them another round of applause? Can we give our moderator, the Honorable Lisa Lucas Burke, a round of applause? Can we give our timekeeper, the Honorable Arnett D. Love McSwain, a round of applause? Listen, guys, tomorrow morning starts early voting, correct? Please, if you know, every year it never fails. People wait till early voting stops, and then when it's time to just go to your precinct, they don't even know where their precinct is. And then you have to help them. So everyone's precinct tomorrow is Portsmouth City Hall. Please get your family and friends. Pick up the phone and tell them, go to City Hall. If they're elderly, seniors, they can go in the basement and they have parking spaces down there for them. And if they can't get out the car, the registrar's office will send someone out there. So please let us get it right this time. And listen, regardless to whether you are pro-Cullen or pro-Moore, I think it is safe to say that these two gentlemen so far, and I believe it's safe to say that it's going to continue this way, have run a remarkable campaign, clean. And we should be very proud of that with the two of them to show that civility still works right here in Portsmouth. Again, thank you guys for coming out. Shall we pray? Father, we thank you as we leave this place, but certainly not out of your presence. Guide each of us, God, to do the right thing first and foremost by exercising our right to vote. God, secondly, we thank you for just taking us back to our place of destination, our homes. Some people may even have to go to work right after they leave here. So God, we ask that you would be with us and keep us in Jesus' name. Amen. The candidates are coming down. Amen. We do have to be out of the building by 7:30, so you can talk to the candidates, but you have about 12 minutes, amen, for us to exit the premises. Come on, give it up for New Testament as we leave.